talk to Sophie Scomps, the independent MP for Mackellar, who's so concerned about it. Cecile says, I'm not surprised gambling is on the rise with young people. My 17-year-old daughter has been complaining to me about seeing gambling ads on TikTok. How can we stop this from happening? I mean, there's a voice quite similar, Cecile, to the one the problem you mentioned on PM last night. It was a father called Martin Caruso who was talking about his daughter being exposed to these ads.
She had installed this app. It asked for her debit card details. Next thing you know, we had $54 coming out of her ANZ account. So it portrays itself as a game. It's got like a koala, and it's got all these children sort of friendly graphics. Doesn't mention anything it's gambling at all.
So childish games which are really gambling dressed up in disguise, and TikTok gambling ads on child-centred sites like TikTok. Sophie Scomps is the independent MP for Mackellar, and she's one of the group of MPs calling for urgent intervention in this area to stop us breeding up really a whole generation who are even more addicted than the current generation of Australians. And Sophie Scomps joins us here on Drive. Sophie, good afternoon.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, good. How big a problem do you think this is?
Look, I think it's become an enormous public health problem, really. There was recently a study done of secondary students in Victoria, and over a third of them had gambled in the last 30 days. And you have reports from all sorts of headmasters and heads of, independent schools and things saying that children are gambling at school, before school, after school, and in class. So it's becoming all pervasive. And we know that our sport has been hijacked by gambling, and kids are being exposed to these ads all the time online, on catch-up TV, on social media, and they're being individually targeted by these companies as well. So really they can't escape it.
And is it true that some of the gambling ads or games don't really look like they're gambling at all? They're kind of disguised as if they're for children.
Well, that's what I hear. I mean, particularly loot boxes and things like that. That's sort of a gateway into gambling, where kids are actually in games, and it's sort of training that behaviour. And the really scary thing is that addictive behaviours and addictive pathways are set down in childhood and in adolescence. So it's no wonder that these companies are targeting these harmful behaviours at children at these young ages, because then they know that they've got a customer for life. It's really hard to break these addictive behaviours once you're set in them.
Dr. Sophie Scomps is here, independent MP for Mackellar, and as I say, one of a number of MPs who say we've got to do something about it. I wonder if you're a parent in particular, whether you've noticed your young people being impacted by this. Have they been gambling themselves? Do they kind of almost have these games where they don't think they're gambling, but really it's effectively either gambling absolutely, or at least it's a gateway to gambling? What have you seen? Have you talked to them about it? 1300 222 702. Have you found a bill on their debit card, as the example I played? On the text 0467 922 702. Sophie, though, is it possible for us to actually do anything? Aren't a lot of the sites overseas run anyway?
A lot of them are overseas run, but I think there's a lot that we can do here in Australia. And it really looks at this sort of more broader picture of what we do to regulate the advertising, the marketing of harmful products to our children. And at the moment, there's a free-for-all, and it's like this saturation marketing, and they get it in all parts of their life. So they get it on TV, they get it on radio, they get it when they're watching the footy match, they get it online, they get it on social media, they get it on TikTok, and they've got influence as well. So we really need to investigate this and start setting down some regulations as well. So I've been looking at the junk food sphere, and even things like regulating or what an influencer is allowed to promote for money as well. It comes down to that level, because we do know that our children are listening to what influencers are saying, and they are seeing those gambling ads on the chest of their sports heroes as well.
And it's no good banning junk food advertising or gambling advertising on children's television if the children aren't watching television. They're watching an influencer on YouTube or a 5-second video on TikTok.
Well, that's exactly right. The TV stuff is just one little step, but there's so much more to it. And what's happening online is that there's really powerful algorithms and AI that are labeling our children, attaching hundreds of labels to our children, and then they're being targeted with advertising specifically. So we know that young boys are being targeted with gambling advertising and alcohol advertising, and our young girls are being targeted with junk food advertising. So there really is this real effort by these companies to really suck the young people in at these young ages when they are most susceptible and vulnerable. Their brains are still developing, and it makes it really hard for these young people to resist.
Well, one of the things I think is good about the latest parliament is there's a little bit more of a variety of backgrounds in the parliament than perhaps there has been at certain times of the recent past. You, for instance, are an emergency specialist doctor before you came to parliament. How much does that experience, that sort of frontline experience of working with people, I'm thinking of the suicide link with gambling, I'm thinking of the obesity link with junk food. Does some of your passion for both these subjects grow out of your experiences in the IR, in the emergency ward?
Yeah, and I mean, I must say that I was a GP most recently, but I also have a background in public health, a Master of Public Health. So that really informs a lot of the way that I look at things. And when I came into Parliament, and I knew I'd worked in public health, and I knew that there'd been really very little activity on preventing overweight and obesity for decades, and experts have been calling for it for decades. I knew that something had to be done, and you look at prevention. So we have these major public health issues with overweight, obesity, with gambling harms, with vaping and things like that. And we really need to do something on the spectrum of prevention when we look at these things. And there are people on the crossbench with a whole lot of different experiences. And I know people like Andrew Wilkie and Zoe Daniel and Kate Cheney have all been working really hard on getting something through on gambling as well. But it's this bigger picture, this broader picture that we have to look at prevention and look at what is happening, what our children are being exposed to on TV all the time.
Dr. Sophie Scomms is with us, the independent MP for Mackellar. So is Justine from Newport. Hi, Justine.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. The sort of ubiquity of the gambling advertising in particular.
Absolutely. My family and I, we all surf. We live on the northern beaches. Hi, Sophie. And, there'll be a Sunday morning when we're all looking out at the horizon, which basically has nothing man-made to it. And then all of a sudden there'll be an aeroplane that comes past with a big flag waving through it. And, of course, we automatically look up and there's an advertisement for gambling. And I just think this is outrageous, the sanctity of the ocean. And you cannot escape it. And it's not just for children. There's decent men out there who are trying to do the right thing, obviously women as well, but I'm going to focus on men for a second. They're trying to do the right thing by doing something healthy, and they cannot escape this habitual exposure of damaging advertising.
You'd think it'd be safe taking the kids down for a healthy surf on a beach, wouldn't you?
You absolutely would. And I just am so offended. When we were growing up, you'd have 15 cigarette sticks, and they banned those to protect the children. We had peach coolers that we knew were being targeted for children my age, and the government banned them. Why is there now no protection of our children?
Yeah, Justine, thank you very much. This is on the text. My son turned 18 last week, says someone who asked to be anonymous for all the obvious reasons. I guess the second thing he did, says my texter, was to apply for his own Medicare card. Good thing. But the first thing he did was to open up a sports betting account. He's generally a sensible kid, only doing a few dollars here and there, and he set a limit. But it broke my heart a little bit. It's like a rite of passage now, especially for boys. And Sophie, I do think those advertising, which are mainly aimed, actually, I don't think they're aimed at kids so much as young men, in which they really do very explicitly say, if you want friends, you've got to gamble. Gambling is the gateway to having good male friendships. Is the argument of those ads. Sophie, sorry, I had your phone level down. Sorry, start again.
No, it is. It's hugely problematic. It's this rhetoric that you need to be gambling to have mates, and actually, where what happens is at home on your own, on your phone, or in doing a poking machine. It's mates, but this whole idea that that's how you get mates. And also, even just on the weekend with all the footy finals, there was a whole lot of commentary about the odds of different things happening. It wasn't so much a commentary that would pop up at halftime about what happened in the match, but commentary as well on what the odds were. So it's become so normalised and so ubiquitous that it really is quite frightening. I think people just cannot escape it.
We can't. We've forgotten how to talk about sport without seeing it through the prism of gambling. We'll see if you can convince the Parliament to do something. Sophie Scomps, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
There's Dr. Sophie Scomps, the independent MP for McKellar.